I wanted to see if I could expand into a business that truly wouldn't rely on me, that was big in scale, that wouldn't rely on just me, and that I could really have a major impact.
This is the Staying Power Podcast, a show that explores the challenges business owners face as they grow. I'm Brandon Hall.
And I'm Thomas Castelli.
And together we ask the tough questions to show you that running a business is not for the faint of heart. But if you have staying power, you'll overcome your challenges and achieve lasting success.
Today we're joined with Nick Sinclair, founder and president of TOA Global, the market leader in dedicated outsourced solutions for accounting firms in the US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and across the globe.
Yeah, the interview with Nick was a lot of fun. We filmed it right in the middle of COVID. And how do you kind of make it through the ups and down swings? What's that biggest challenge that you faced? And it wasn't a COVID challenge, but it was really similar. So basically, TOA Global made it through an earthquake. An earthquake rocked the Philippines, which is where all of his workers are, and destroyed his offices. And he jumped into action and got things rebuilt and going very quickly. But it was just a good segment of this podcast because everybody else right now, at least, is going through the COVID crisis. So definitely pay attention to that piece.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of this podcast was the people plan and how he laid out how they kind of create a plan for where the firm is now, where they need to go, and how various people within their organization can move up. And I thought that was excellent. He actually gave some pretty good insights on how to have those types of conversations with your staff as well.
Yeah, especially when you identify that people on your team might not necessarily be able to scale with you to the heights that you're trying to scale to, right? And that was the cool thing. We kept asking him, wait, but tell us more. How do you actually have that conversation? Because that's tough. If you have an employee that's been with you for a really long time, they've got the tenure, they're the legacy employee, they're a great person, but you just know in your gut that they are not going to be able to scale to the same heights that you want to scale to, and that you have to bring in people that will be managing them. So they're going to have bosses that are not you anymore. How do you have those conversations? That's a tough conversation to have. And Nick definitely shed some light on it for us.
Absolutely. And we spoke about a lot of other great things in the interview. He also removed himself as CEO, just like Dan Hanford did. Another interview we did here. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into today's episode. Nick, thanks for taking the time to come on the show today. Would you be able to give our listeners a little information on your background?
Yes, thanks for having me, Tom. Really appreciate it. So for 12 years, I was a financial advisor and owned an accounting firm in Australia, Gold Coast in Australia. So for many years, I was a practitioner. I was advising clients. But for the last 5-6 years, I've been focusing on running TOA Global, which is an outsourcing company based in the Philippines with offices in San Diego, Canada, and Australia. So really serving accounting firms as our clients.
What made you decide to go from being a financial advisor to starting TOA Global and, going into the outsourced niche and building teams for accounting firms?
Yeah, so originally I was a financial planning business. That's what our bread and butter was, our focus. And I got sick of waiting for the accounting firms that we had alliance partnerships with to get the work done so that we could get finance applications or whatever the work we needed. And I didn't think it was that difficult. So I went and bought an accounting firm and realised how complex it was. But I bought a very small business and we're 100% cloud-based, and we grew that really fast. And then I happened to be in the Philippines for an event with a group called Entrepreneurs Organisation, which is a global organisation started out of America by Vern Harnish. And I was there for the board retreat, and one of our members said, "Look, Nick, come and have a look at my office. I've got 30 people working over in the Philippines successfully for a couple of years." So I went and had a look at that, and he was generating 2,000 leads a day. They're a removals company, and then he had his finance department. He had all these areas, and it just really opened my eyes up. And I was like, okay, how could I apply this to my business? So I instantly back to Australia and said to our general manager, said, "Look, I'm going to start our bookkeeping division based out of the Philippines. So we'll do it at $20 an hour as a lead generation strategy for our accounting business." And that took off. And then ultimately, the provider I was using, it wasn't working, the relationship wasn't working. We would train these people up. They would then move into another client within the same facility. So we were basically becoming their trainers. So I say being young, dumb and naive, I basically went, all right, why don't we just set up our own company here? So We set up our own office there. We put on 30 staff. In Australia, only had 38. So we put a whole back office team over there. And it was never meant to be a business, but a friend of mine, a guy called Rob Nixon, who coaches in the accounting industry, is quite well known in Australia, does a bit in the North America market now. He said to me, Nick, why don't you come on the roadshow? I'm speaking to 1,500 accountants over 13 cities. He coaches on business advisory, or he's basically a coach, but he helps accountants get out of the day-to-day and really add value to their clients. He said, look, he wanted to use me as I understand now that he was trying to use me as like, there's these young punks like this guy that are going to set up offshore teams, do $20 an hour bookkeeping as a lead gen strategy to then basically take your accounting clients. So you need to move upstream. What I didn't realise is that, and I knew I'd learn a lot going on that with him, so I said yes. After the first place we went to, I had 5 accounting firms come to me and say, look, I love what you're doing. We don't want to have to go and incorporate and set up and replicate what you've done. Do you have any spare desks? And I had 20 spare desks in my office. And I say being entrepreneurial, or others have said that, I was just being ambitious. I looked at it and went, right, well, if I sell those 20 desks on a monthly basis, that'll pay for my office costs and a large part of my staff costs for my own firm. So I said yes, but after 3 weeks, I'd sold 90 seats and it turned into a business. And then we doubled the next year to 200, 400, 800. We're now just under 1,600 people. We now service not only Australian firms and New Zealand firms, but Canadian and American firms. So it was never by design. It happened by default, and then it continued to grow and flourish. And I got out of my financial planning and accounting firm and now 100% focus on the growth of this business, which has been a fun ride. It's not always been easy, which I'm sure we'll cover off some of those things today.
Yeah. So wait, so you had 20 extra desks and you sold over 90?
Yeah. So on the 3-week tour, I basically sold 90 people, and it turned into a business. In 3 weeks, this business came out of nowhere.
And so how did you fulfill that capacity demand? I would imagine you had to move pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I was fortunate at the time. We just went and got more clusters of offices. So I took, where our office was, I took the space next door to that, which had another 30 seats, just knocked the wall down. And then across the aisle from us was another office where another 30. So as we continued to sell indirectly, we just kept taking more and more clusters of offices within the same building. And then 12 months later, we put them all together in one office. So yeah, it was very much, it was interesting.
Interesting. So you started this business as a means to help your own firm generate leads for the higher level advisory type services, the higher margin services, and it ended up becoming a business in and of itself. When did you pull the trigger on just moving into TOA Global full time, and what was that decision making like?
Yeah, so I was the sole owner of my financial planning and accounting practice. So we had, including the Philippine staff, 68 staff. And then, in 9 months, I had over 100 staff for this other business. So it quite quickly became quite consuming. And I was working significant hours. I was going through a divorce at the time as well. So there was a lot going on in my life so it was probably about 18 months in, 12 to 18 months in, I made the decision, look, this is just not sustainable to do both. TOA Global was growing quickly, like we were growing fast. And to be honest, I always wanted to have a business that, wasn't reliant on me. And while I had, I call it 68 staff for my financial planning and accounting, I was still the sole owner. So even though, it was run independently by a GM and there was different people always, when things were going wrong, want to talk to me. So I wanted to see if I could expand into a business that truly wouldn't rely on me, was big in scale, that wouldn't rely on just me, and that I could really have a major impact, as opposed to, the small scale that we were on at that stage.
Makes a lot of sense. So when you were scaling this business, and when you moved yourself out of the financial planning business and the accounting firm into TOA Global, it sounds like a lot of the growth came organically, but were there any challenges you faced when acquiring customers and do customer acquisition for that specific business?
Yeah, so it was, the first wave was easy because I was on stage speaking for an hour as part of a full day program, and the accounting firms that were there were innovative, are industry leading. So when it turned into a business, the first wave was easy, but then I went, hang on, we now need to grow and make this a real business. We can't just rely on that one roadshow we did that wasn't even meant to create what we've created. So we then had to put in place, obviously, the ability to sell. So we had to bring in a sales and marketing engine. And over the years, that's continued to evolve, even to the point now where, we're recruiting quite a senior role in marketing now. And it's very different to what it was 5 years ago, how we marketed when we were 90 people versus how we now market when we're 1,600 across 4 countries. The complexity has significantly grown. So, there's definitely challenges along that way.
What were the challenges you had with the marketing that you originally started with that kind of caused you to grow and change into a different marketing and sales system?
Yes, so I think the first one was around, there was no marketing at the start other than me being on stage. So we went from it wasn't even a business concept or idea to, being on stage and selling the business or creating the business. And then it was, how do we start to market this business? And this is back, 6 and a bit years ago now, when outsourcing and offshoring in the Australia-New Zealand market was still very much a dirty word. It wasn't something that was common. Now if you, in the Australian market particularly, it's, if you go to an event and say, you ask now who isn't outsourcing as opposed to who is. So if you flip that in the North American market, we're probably back to where Australia was, which is very much around, it's not a common thing. It's more the innovative and industry-leading firms that are doing it, as opposed to it being normal like it is over in Asia Pacific. So I think the biggest challenge is that getting people to understand our model is very different to traditional outsourcing of send a job, get a job. So we had to educate the market on what we do. And, I'm not a marketer. I was a financial planner. That was my background. That was my, I ran a financial services business, financial planning, accounting. So to then have to pivot and learn how to ultimately sell to accountants who are, typically introverts, they're very educated, it was something that we had to learn quick. So originally we just put on a salesperson because we had the demand. And then the second part of it was then starting to do, how do we sell to accountants best? And we found, outbound phone teams were the best, surprisingly. So we would have them as appointment setters and a lot of content strategy originally at the start. But that's definitely evolved over the years. It's, a lot of it now is more digital. I call it digital dating. It's basically coming up everywhere in someone's face so that they get familiar with our brand and they get familiar with the, I suppose, understanding of what we do to the point where we then can have a conversation with them.
Makes a lot of sense that the marketing scales as the team scales and you start focusing on additional channels. And then over time, yeah, you're right. It just becomes more digital based than not. I think that we've even experienced that at our firm too. Kind of coming back to the team building. I'm really big on team building at our firm. You have 1,600 employees at TOA Global. Does that include the bookkeepers that you're contracting out to the firms as well?
Yeah, so it includes all the teams. So our support team, if you look at our business in 2 functions, we've got a support function that supports our clients, and there's a bit over 200 staff that do that across the 4 countries. And then we've got the 1,400 team members that are working for accounting firms.
Got it.
So they're the ones that are working solely for those businesses.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so thinking back as you started scaling this thing up, when did you officially start scaling this out? What year was that?
So the start of 2014 was March 2014 that I went on the roadshow. So that's
wow. So 2014 to now, you've experienced some incredible scale then.
Yeah, it's close to 100% of revenue growth and people growth year on year. So
holy smokes.
It sounds good. It's been certainly challenging and there's lots of hours put into that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the challenges. That's what we're here for. So the people piece, I'm really curious. How do you build a team of 1,600 people in a matter of 6 years? And let's talk about maybe the earlier periods there where the team was smaller, maybe 10 to 30 people or so. What were some challenges you faced? How'd you hold people accountable? How'd you kind of get through that initial structuring? I know that's a big piece of setting the stage for future growth.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things that I look at, particularly on the people strategy and culture and growing, it's how you manage it almost in stages. So up to about 50 staff, it needs to be managed a certain way. And then it goes into the next level and then the next level and continues up. So I think some of the biggest challenges when we first started is we had we employed a leadership team in the Philippines. It was very new though, so we had a lot of our Australian team going over to the Philippines every month to basically go there and train and lead them. So I think, at the start it was the established leadership that we had within our business in Australia was going over and leading the business in the Philippines. So that was originally, while I was still had both businesses, how it played out. I think some of the biggest wins that we had is we got some strong leaders just right off the bat. So we employed, when we looked at the original 30 team members that was working for my own accounting firm and financial planning firm, within that we had employed 4 leaders of 4 different sections, including a HR support person. So we really set it up with some strong leadership. It cost us more money to start with, but I wanted to have that stability of leadership right from day one, as opposed to putting on the team and then growing the leaders over time. My strategy has always been, let's pay the money we need to get some strong leaders that can take us to 100 staff. So I always hire people with what I call a 2-year runway. So they're 2 years before we need them in capability, but that also gives us the ability to grow them another year or 2 out so that they can stay with us for a good 4 years before we will outgrow them in capability. So, in that early phase, it was really around, it's a lot easier, to be honest. In a smaller number of employees, you've got stronger one-on-one relationships. So, like, I went there quite often. So I would build relationships with all of the team members because of the number that were there. I mean, now it's significantly harder with 1,600 staff. It's impossible. So it was really around defining the culture we wanted. I'm a big believer that culture is a process that just needs to be personalised. So we really, got the leaders in that we needed, define the culture and build a process around it to make it work and scale. And then we went into the other levels, which I don't know if you want to talk about those now, but, it's different challenges as you scale with people.
Think back to maybe as you were scaling the team out, what was something that you tried that failed miserably?
I think, look, we were growing quick. So the biggest thing that we failed in was originally we didn't have the leaders that could scale as quick with us. So they were very good at what they did, but they weren't great at scaling. And the biggest challenge is that change was constant with us, and it still is now. And we now, as part of our recruitment strategy, 1, do you like change? 2, how do you deal with change? And dive into a lot of experiences on how they've done that. Because if someone comes into an organisation that's growing and scaling and they don't like change, they really, really struggle. And if you look at the industry that we work in accounting, and this is nothing negative, but typically they're introverts, typically they're risk adverse. So when you've got an organisation that employs 95% of your staff are from that industry, then you're very much going against when you're going growth orientated, 100% growth, taking risks. We've got another 20 people starting. Cool, let's just go and get another office. Pay the deposits, get it done. Let's, with no clear strategy at the start. So that's, the biggest challenge was really that.
All right, I want to dive into this more, but Tom and I are smiling because we've had literally this exact same conversation. Go ahead, Tom, what you say?
Yeah, I was going to say, the entire thing you said with the recruiting and having the people you hire understand they're always working in an environment that's always changing is definitely key, because, we've seen there's a lot of people who often want to get into their seat, sit in the seat, and do the same thing over and over again, which is great. But when you're scaling, to your point, things will constantly change. People need to be able to adapt to that change.
Well, and I think that it's a unique problem that a lot of business owners especially face, because business owners, at least if they have scale in mind, right? And I know that a lot of accounting firms are out there where the business owner just hangs their shingle out and they just start preparing tax returns. They don't really have scale in mind. They're just doing the work, kind of like what you were talking about, right? They're good leaders. They're good at the work, but they're not really necessarily good at scale. They're not even thinking about scale. But when you put a business owner that is thinking about scale constantly, every single day is a day of change for that business owner. Every single day. That business owner is looking at the way that people talk to each other, looking at the way that things are delivered, looking at the sales process. Every single minute is, how can I make this better? And that stresses people out. They just want to come in and do their job. And so I'm curious, how did you kind of approach that with these leaders when you recognize, oh man, they're really good at what they do, but they don't have that scale capability, how did you approach that with them? And what was the result?
It's probably to be honest, one of my biggest learnings is that understand where your team members' ambitions are in their career and then align that with the business. And sometimes you have people that think they want to become a leader or a manager, but they're really great technicians and they can't scale quick enough. So we always look at, when we're recruiting a role, particularly senior leader ones, do we have someone that has the ability to grow into this role, and can we develop them into this role? Or is it talent that we need to buy in because we can't train them quick enough to get to that level? And that was probably one of the biggest things, is that at the start I wanted to grow everyone as the business grew, and we grew leaders that we just outgrew their capability and they couldn't grow quick enough, and we realised that that was actually holding us back. So I think a really key point is understanding people's ambitions, but understanding where they're realistically at now. And can those ambitions grow as quick as your need for them? And if the answer is no, that's fine. It just means that you need to buy the talent in at the start. And then the key with buying talent is one of their objectives is to grow the talent that wants to grow up into that role so that everyone's moving up progressively. So that was one of the biggest lessons, is just understanding people's motivations and capabilities, and then aligning that with the organisations where, sometimes it just doesn't fit. Sometimes they're just not capable to grow quick enough.
Well, and so let's say that you've had a leader that's been with you for a while and you recognize, I can't, it's just not going to work. Like we're scaling too fast and you're not realistically going to get there. How do you even have that conversation?
I think you just need to be honest. And I mean, we've got someone in our business that she started with us as the office manager, and when we started, she was the most senior person in the business, and then the business grew to what it is today, and she wasn't capable to keep growing. So, every year we had to have the conversation saying, look, this is where you're at, this is where the company's at, these are the skill sets we need to bring in. And we've brought in, directors, VPs, executives above her, and it's been a constant battle, though, to be honest. Even now we have those conversations with her because was the highest person in the business for the first 6 months. And then we hired well above her over that. So you just have to have those tough conversations, but have them still buy in, and as what is her journey within our journey, and how is she going to grow and develop and become better because of it.
Well, and so how do you get that buy-in? Like, how do you structure the conversation in a way where, you are being honest and you're saying you do have a spot here and we want you to be here, but it's not going to be at the 10x level that you want it to be at because you're not ready. How do you deliver that message, but still on the back end, create that space that you've still got the trust, you've still got the buy-in, and that person still wants to be here? Because I think that's a big struggle that a lot of people have. I mean, I know a lot of accounting firms where they've got partners who are just not going to ever cut it. They've got managers, they've got senior associates, whatever, that they're just not going to cut it either. But they're not willing to, or they don't know how to have that conversation in a way where they can communicate where they're trying to go, what they're trying to do, but still make that person feel like they've got a really solid spot on the team.
I think for us, we follow Vern Harnish's scaling up model. So we've always had a one-page plan. We've always had a very clear, the first 6 months we didn't, but after that we got into the Vern Harnish philosophy. And we've always had a one-page plan. So we've been very clear and structured in where we're going and how we're going to get there. And people is a massive part of our business. I mean, that we need them on the journey. So they've bought into what we're doing and why we're doing it, and they understand their role within it. It's not always, like I said, it's not always interesting when you're bringing people above them, but when you do that, you need to mentor and coach them through that. But then when they see what the new people coming in can do for not only them but for the business, they start to understand it. So it becomes easier as it does. I mean, it's hard because if your manager just puts someone above you and you miss out on the job, your first reaction is, well, stuff you, I'm going to leave. Instead of, we've really coached our team members to go, we're going to bring someone in that is the best at what they do. And one of their KPIs is to make you a better person and to grow you, so that you can replace them so they can move to the next level within the organisation as well. So when you frame it that what's in it for them, and they see it as, well, hang on, they've brought in this rock star that I can now learn from. They see the benefit as opposed to brought someone in above me when that should have been my job.
That makes a lot of sense. I really like that. So you approach them with the, hey, this is going to happen. You're not making it necessarily a negative conversation. You're saying this is going to happen and here's what's in it for you. Their KPI is to grow and develop you and get you to this level so that you can replace them and they can bounce up to the next level. And then we're all going to continue scaling as a result of that.
Yeah, I think the other part of it is we have a very clear people plan. So when we do the one-page plan, we also say, these are all the roles that we're going to have for the next 1, 3, 5 years. These are open for anyone in our organisation now to aspire to and to drive to. And we will help build out a learning plan and a training plan to get you there. But in some cases, you will not get there fast enough, which means we're going to have to hire someone in initially. But that's when we bring in and introduce the what's in it for them, being we're going to bring someone in, they can train you up so that they can move up as we grow, because we've shown them the next 3, 5 years worth of people strategy. They can see all of these roles above them that are coming online, so they can aspire to, longer term knowing that. I think one of the challenges is most businesses and most accounting firms I talk to, they don't even have their people strategy for 3 months, let alone 1 year and 3 years. So no one in the organisation can aspire to anything because they don't really know what's there to aspire to. So when you map out a very clear strategy for the business that's linked to these are the people that we're going to need to achieve that strategy, and this is where we see you fitting into it, when you link all of that together, it all works. When you don't do any of it, people will have no idea what your plans are for them.
That's an excellent way to put it. Have your people strategy, know where your business is going, and then be able to kind of show your people where they can go and how they can move up and how this all kind of fits together. I thought that was a fascinating way of looking at it. Kind of looking at another aspect of the business, we do know that TOA is an outsourced firm for other people across the globe at this point, United States, Canada, and what have you. How does technology play into this, and what challenges have you faced with technology while scaling this business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, internally, we scaled so fast that our infrastructure internally didn't keep up with it, and that was one of our biggest challenges. Is that we just kept throwing people at the problem because labour. I mean, we're working in a cost-effective environment in the Philippines, which is where all of our team, 95% of our team are in the Philippines. So you've got cost-effective labour, and what we originally were just so focused on was keeping up with the growth and just, so we threw people at the problem. We just kept putting more people on to manage the more people. And it was still, it was cost-effective to do that. But 18 months ago, we really looked at our strategy and realised that we were significantly overstaffed in our support area because we just kept putting people on as opposed to really defining and driving technology as a strategy. So now we've, in the last 12 months, and it's part of our global initiative for the next 12 months, moving forward is really around how do we digitalise and automate, as much as possible and move our team up the value chain so that they can help and add value to the clients more. So look, tech was something that we struggled with at the start. I mean, at the start, it was, when we were less than 100 staff, it was okay. The payroll systems we used were fine. And what you find, though, is as you grow and scale, the systems you use become redundant. And I remember that within our accounting firm. Like when we had that, Workflow Max, we used Xero. We're 100% Xero firm. That was back in the early days of cloud. And we used Workflow Max, or what they gave you. And that was great until we got to, when we got to 68 staff within our accounting and financial planning firm, that wasn't a CRM. It wasn't capable of managing our financial planning business, our accounting business. We had a mortgage broking business. We had a property buyer's agent business. And we're using all different systems for them. So I think one of the challenges with businesses is you need to really understand that as you grow, your technology stack needs to grow and evolve. I mean, we're to the point now where we're in ERP systems. So we're spending significant money, 7 figures on technology, and we use Microsoft as a platform. So we've got, a whole tech team in-house that just develops and tweaks it and fine-tunes it and integrates it. And I think the key, I look at business as 3 real things: people, process, technology. Some people do the people part really well, some do it really poorly, some do the tech really well, but they don't do the people part right, or some people are sold tech by, our industry is great. I think the accounting industry is being sold to really well for the last 10 years. So people have bought technology and not implemented 80% of the features of it. So they're not really getting the true benefit of it, or they implement technology but still use a process they were using 15 years ago, but it's not relevant now. So I really think that businesses need to focus on people, process, technology, but I think the missing part with a lot of them is they don't map the customer's journey with the business first and then link technology and process to that journey. I think the accounting industry, one of my biggest complaints with it, if you want to use that as a word, is that firms are very much focused about their own internal situation rather than the customer's journey and situation. And that's, I think, being, the cloud, I call it the cloud salespeople. And, I love Xero and I love the, Intuits and all of that. But they've sold this dream of work anywhere, work anytime. Cloud is so wonderful. But what they don't sell is what's the benefit for your client? What's the customer experience that your customer's getting, not the service that they're paying for? And linking technology, process and people to serve that journey and that experience. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned is that, we weren't using technology effectively and our customer experience was suffering because of that. And then we didn't map the journey for the customer, we mapped it for our own business. And that's really where I think, we had a lot of failings, but a lot of learnings and, we pivoted quick and that's our aim, is to provide our clients with an experience, not a service.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think that's something that we can relate to here is you got to keep your mind focused on client experience, on customer experience in some businesses, of course, because at the end of the day, that's who you're looking to satisfy. And it can't just all be based on internals, because if it's all based on internals and your customers can't see that, they're ultimately going to suffer as a result of it if it's just based on you.
Well, and just real quick on that point too. It's like, okay, if I create a process that utilizes technology that makes Tom's life super easy, does that actually translate to anything tangible for the client? Or is Tom's life just now super easy? Maybe it translates, but I think that your point, Nick, is that, you start with how do you make the client's life amazing? How do you make the experience within the firm amazing? And then let's translate that back to how does Tom work on the account? And then how to make Tom's life easier to ultimately you're just being more deliberate on like looking all the way through to the client at the end of the day, which is interesting because I'm sitting here thinking about technology that we've implemented even recently that makes some of our people's lives a lot easier, but the clients aren't really benefiting from any of that necessarily. They don't know. The experience wouldn't be necessarily different if they went to another CPA firm.
I think that's the point. Yeah. The other point is that it's not, I think this industry's got a real luxury of it's hard to lose a client. Like when I had my accounting firm, when I bought the accounting firm, I was a financial planner. I had no idea about accounting, but I didn't think it was that difficult. And because of that attitude and because of my lack of knowledge in it, we stuffed up a lot. Like we made a lot of mistakes with our clients, but yet we kept growing that division. It's like, why, we completely stuffed the books on this client. We admitted it, we fixed it, but they didn't leave. And I think accountants have the luxury of it's really hard to lose a client. So they don't focus on the client experience because we're in an industry where everyone needs us. We're in an industry where, accountants are always going to be needed. So we're fortunate that people don't leave us. It's not hard to get new clients because, other accountants don't always deliver great service. So to stand out, it's not hard. And I think that's pivoting and changing with, new modern, what I'm calling the modern firms, cloud firms, the ones that are focused on an experience and delivery to a client that's above and beyond what a normal firm would do. So I definitely think it's changing.
Well, and I think too, with the relationships that you can build, I think that you build a really strong relationship, you get a little bit of leeway whenever you make those mistakes. Yeah. That's what we've experienced firsthand. We've also experienced that when we're trying to coax like a really big client away from another CPA firm. It's like, hey, we've pointed out millions of dollars of mistakes. Why are you still with them? Well, I've been friends with them for 10 years. They come over to my football parties. It's like, well, okay. How do you can't fight that, right? Like they're willing to put up with this extreme cost because of the relationship. So I 100% agree.
So we asked this question to everybody on this podcast, and that is, was there any challenge along this journey that was so treacherous, so challenging that you said, you know what, I'm going to give up? What was that challenge, and how did you overcome that challenge?
The biggest one was probably a year ago. We had an earthquake in the Philippines. So one of our, so we're across 3 areas in the Philippines. We do that as part of our disaster recovery plan. We have a big, thick disaster recovery plan document. And I saw online an earthquake happened, and I rang our ops guy there and I said, how is it? And he said, oh, look, it was pretty bad. I said, what are the offices like? He said, I haven't logged on to the cameras yet. So he logged on to the cameras and he just said, I need to go to the office. He didn't let me, I don't have access to the cameras in the offices. So he went in there and he basically took a video, and 2 of our offices in this one region that seat about 800 people were completely destroyed. So the office next door we were fitting out at the time, so we had a lot of the trades and services. But at that time, that was 70% of our staff are in that location, and I just went, this is we're already working massive hours, and now we've got destroyed offices where team members can't work, houses that they live in are destroyed. Like as a situation, it was extremely challenging. And you get through that period, and I mean, we were fortunate. We were fitting out an office next door. We had an office operational within 30 hours. We had all staff back up and running. Most other providers were down for months. We were up and running. It was only 30 hours. It took us 2 weeks to get all offices fully operational again. But all of our team, we were just double shifting shifts so that they could all work. And at the end of that, you sit there and you go, I've built this thing that, you can't, natural disasters you can't control. You just don't know. And then like a month later, our San Diego office had a massive, California had a significant earthquake as well. Luckily, there's no damage. And I'm like, no matter how great your intentions are and how great you are at building things, something like that comes along and it can completely take you offline. A lot of my friends lost their businesses during those times because they couldn't recover quick enough. And I had a friend of mine that I spoke to her 2 days ago. She actually sold after that. She said, you know what, I just don't want that stress and pain anymore. I just don't need that. So she actually was a trigger point for her to exit. For me, it was, I thrive in times of struggle. So for me, it was a great unity of our leaders and in how we came together globally. Our local team, it was a great test to see how they acted. Now, I wouldn't want to go through those again. But then you throw in a time that we're right in the middle of now, the coronavirus, no one's working from offices anymore. We're 100% remote. Yeah, there's definitely times I think you do it, but always, when we're going through those times, I thrive and I love it. And at the end of it, you go through the lull after it and you're like, I don't know if I got it in me to do it again, but then I always revisit what's our 1, 3, 5 year strategy? Why are we doing this? What's the value that we're adding? And then I look at it from my own personal side and go, well, what do I want out of my life? I've got very clear plans of where I want to go, and sitting at home not doing anything isn't part of that strategy. So take it as a learning, grow from it. I mean, we are better with the coronavirus now that's happening because of the earthquake. And I always look and go, well, maybe that was a test because that was only 800 staff. This affects 1,600 staff in 4 countries, not just one location. So for us, we mobilised a workforce in 24 hours to be 100% remote, which is not a business that we do. But we went through the pre-season a year ago. We knew how we had to communicate with team members. We knew how we had to communicate with clients. We knew internally the crisis team that we already had crisis channels. We already had, the crisis teams put together. We'd had a pre-run a year ago. So I think through those hardships you learn. And so it either breaks some people and realises, yeah, this is not what I want, or for others it's like, yeah, it's just a hill we've had to climb and we've learned and we've become better for it, and we'll just keep going and keep trotting towards our vision of where we want to go.
So you said that you thrive in times of chaos. You love it because it brings everybody together. You get a lot of unity. But I got to imagine when you heard about that earthquake and when you saw the offices in rubble or shambles, there was probably a little bit of panic going on. Or are you just like, I've got this figured out?
Yeah, look, I say that I thrive in crisis. I just get bored if we're not growing. So And I was interviewing someone for a role yesterday, and I said, I was talking about like why she's changed roles every 4 years, and she said, I get things to a point where it becomes normal, and then I get bored, and I don't want to be normal. I just want to grow it, take it to that level. Once I've added value, I move to the next thing. So during the time of the earthquake, I was not thinking about, will we be able to recover? I mean, so the first thing we found out, the structure of the building was okay. The roof was on, the walls were on, the windows were on. It was our internal fit out that was the problem. So for me, it was really around how do I lead through these times? I had a new CEO in the role. He'd only been in the role for about 12 months. So I was working very closely with him and the crisis team just to get back to business. How do we, I wasn't even thinking about could we or should we or how, or it was just what do we need to do to execute? And we were on calls every hour for 20 hours a day. We were just making it happen. It was only, I think it was about 3 to 4 weeks later. I went there after 2 weeks. I flew over the Philippines and I was there after that. And then I went back home and then went back again 2 weeks later. And it was only when our production team, our video and marketing team, did a one-on-one with me. And they started asking me questions, and it broke me because they're like, how does it feel going through that? And I just broke down. I just started getting emotional. I'm like fucking trying to whack myself going, come on, man, like you're meant to be the leader here. But I realised then that within a minute, like our whole business could have been done. And it could have been a harder road to recovery. We were lucky that we were somewhat prepared. We had other offices. There was a range of reasons why we were able to recover so quick, but it was only later that I reflected, and that's something that I've always done in my life. I don't really reflect on the past. I'm always looking forward. I think that's the financial planner in me. I'm always looking at what's next. So I don't really sit back and go, we could have lost everything then. I'm like, what did we learn from that so that next time that happens, we can mobilise and do it quicker? So is it more offices in different locations? What is the thing that we can do? So I think that's a strong part of mine is that I don't reflect on the past, but then it's also, in a lot of cases, that's a negative as well.
Who do you lean on, like when that type of crazy stuff is going on? Who do you lean on for support, guidance, advice? Do you have like a coach, a group, anything like that?
So I've always had a coach. So we use a company called TOA Coaching International. They're actually based in America. And my coach has, built a $300-400 million business and exited. He's played in the NFL. He's been there and done a lot of what I'm trying to do. So I've always had mentors, informal mentors originally at the start, but in the most, recent 2 to 3 years, myself, our CEO, and a few other executives, we get them coaching from people that have been to the level that we want to play at and have done it. So even during the coronavirus, last week I had my coach and he brought 2 other coaches in. One of them had sold a significant business to Apple many years ago and exited. The other coach had grown and exited, and they'd all been through times similar to this. No one's been through this time with obviously what's going on now, but similar experiences over their, 30, 40, 50-year career. So that's one thing that I've always had a mentor. I've always had a coach, and I've always picked someone that's here, that's been there and done it, not someone that's teaching you in theory. And that's one thing that I hate is that people that talk about things based on a textbook, I only listen to people that have gone through it by experience. And that's a key thing. I only share things from experience. I never tell people what to do. I always tell them based on what I've done and what I did well and what I failed at, so they can learn from that, rather than you should grow a business with 100 people. Well, how many people do you employ? Oh, I'm just a sole trader. How many have you ever managed a business with 100 people? Oh, no, but, I know because I can read numbers. No, you don't. You've never experienced it. So don't try and tell me what I should do when you've never done it. Like, your theory is great. Practical experience is what counts at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is interesting. I've had the business coaches that you're talking about, and I've also had the ones that are way up here. And my best coach right now he runs a $50 million business, and it's night and day difference. Before I even had him, I wouldn't have known. And now that I have him, it's just, I'll go through some downs and I'll call him up and I'll be like, oh, you're fine. Like, it's fine. I've been through this. You'll be over in 2 days. And you chalk it up to a Harvard MBA education. You'll be okay. But it's a different level than talking. Yeah. But it's just a different level than talking to like friends, family. I have found that is really, for me, the hardest thing is whenever I'm struggling with something outside of my coach, it's hard to find support because I can't fully accept what they're telling me because they don't relate to where I'm at, if that makes sense. Yeah. And, I remember when I started the business back in 2015 and I was just trying to figure out how to get a couple clients. My mom's advice was great at the time. And then I scaled. And then by 2017, my mom was giving advice. And I was like, I don't know if this is relevant anymore. It's just kind of an interesting observation.
It is. A mate of mine who runs the largest payroll system in New Zealand, he said to me, Nick, always take advice from people that have done it, been there and done it. And if you want to make yourself feel better, go and talk to someone that's in a worse position than you because it'll make you feel personally better about yourself. So always have mates that are, in a worse position than you. So you can go and always, when you talk about your thing and they turn around and go, your problem's really bad, this is mine, then it makes you personally feel better, but only get advice from people that have done it. And that was some good advice. It was interesting.
I have to 100% agree with everything they've just said there. And it's like Napoleon Hill, the guy, Think and Grow Rich guy. He said, if you want to stay broke, listen to your friends and family. And I'll tell you straight from experience, it's 100% true. I took a lot of advice from friends and family over the years, and it kind of kept me in a box. It wasn't until I went out and sought the advice of people who've been there and done that where I actually started to see things actually happen from that. So couldn't agree more. But I know we're coming up on time here. I want to ask Nick, what's next for you? What's next for you in TOA Global?
I think it's continuing to grow and scale and ultimately serve. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that we're looking at is how do we be the big small? How do we continue to deliver an experience like we've only got one customer, but scale it to have an impact? And I think that's our biggest thing with TOA. It's continuing to grow it. North America is a big market for us. We've only been there for about 18 months. So, Canada, USA is a big expansion plan for us. And just continuing to help. I suppose a big part of what we do is we help accounting firms get capacity so they can actually serve their clients at a higher level. And that's really a big focus for ours, is to continue to help more businesses so they can continue to help the small business communities that they operate and serve. So more growth, more challenges, more sleepless nights, more pain, more fun, a bit of everything.
Love to hear that. So where can our listeners, if they want to learn more about you or the outsourced accountant TOA, how could they do so?
The easiest way is toaglobal.com for the company. If they want to find me, Nick Sinclair, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, on all the socials, I'm pretty active in all of them. So just reach out, and more than happy to chat and answer any questions people have.
I want to thank you again for coming on the show today. It's been excellent. I know that it's 7:30 a.m. over there now in Australia.
It's late.
I want to thank you for coming on the show today. It's been an excellent episode, and we're looking forward to releasing it for sure.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share some of my experiences with you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on iTunes and share the show with other business owners who may be facing their own growth challenges. And if you own a professional services firm, consider joining our private community. The Staying Power Collective is a community where owners of accounting, law, and consulting firms discuss best practices for running and growing virtual businesses. You'll get access to our Slack group, and you'll have a Zoom meeting once a month with a small group of other firm owners. To apply for the group, head on over to www.stayingpowercollective.com and fill out the brief form. And if you have suggestions for future topics or guests, or if you have general questions or feedback, send us an email at contact@stayingpowercollective.com. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great rest of your week.